Hello and welcome to Awaken and Rebuild, class number 11. With me, Rabbi Rafi Mollot, everybody's Rebbi. We have in the studio with us right now, Abigail and Colin. And we have two people currently watching on YouTube. If you'd like to identify yourself in the chat comments, you can, and tell us where you are joining from. We have now Golden Gun joining us in the studio. If you'd like to join us in the studio, the link is pinned at the top of the YouTube comments. In addition to that, if you'd like to join my mailing list, you can send me an email at rabbi@rabbirafimallot.com. My name is spelled like you see it on the screen right now. One word, rabbi@rafimallot.com. Rabbi@rabbirafimallot.com. You can support this channel by subscribing, by becoming a channel member, by liking this video, sharing this video. We have now in the chat just Lisa saying hello, and hello to you. A reminder that this series is brought to you by the Seattle Kollel. You can visit their website, seattlekollel.com. You can drop a tax-deductible donation to support Torah learning and Jewish family programming for the Jewish family, for the Jewish community of Seattle, Washington. If you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can also shop at artscroll.com/Rebbi Rafi, REBBI There are also donation links in the description of this video if you'd like to contribute in a more sizable way. Speaking of contributions, this week's class is sponsored by John Volkoff in memory of Paul Hosen, Hozen, a person that was dear to him that passed away, and he wishes to dedicate our Torah study in his honor, and we shall do so. We have JJ Otto, Shalom Rav from Iowa, USA. Welcome. Okay, now my policy as usual is you can jump in at any time with questions or comments. You can join the studio and comment live and it literally interrupt me while I'm speaking. Or you can put your comment in the YouTube chat. If I have time, I will read it and respond to it. If not, not, right? But what I'll try to do first and foremost is if people want to purchase a super chat, which is a highlighted comment, I will make a special effort to respond to those because you paid for it. Excuse my background, because normally I try to make the background match the thumbnail of the video, but because I was rushing last minute, I never had a chance to change the background. I might be able to change it now, but I don't want to waste time. On that note, it's been a bit of a hectic week. My wife is out of town. I'm single parenting this week, so I didn't have the time I usually have to prepare the slides I like to have ready for the class. So I think this week we're going to look maybe directly at Sefaria. I'm being very daring right now. I'm not sure if I should do this, but we'll look directly at Sefaria, and I'll try to speak a little bit more off the cuff about what I wanted to say. And in particular, my goal is to see the commentary of Malbim on the passages we're going to see, and that we'll look at the text of Malbim, but we'll go a little bit off the beaten path tonight first. Golden Gun says, background is perfect. We should all have a large photo or picture of the temple in our homes, and perfect while studying Haggai. Yeah, it's true. It's appropriate. We have 112JA says, Shalom, and Shalom to you. Okay, so let me put on the screen Sefaria, if that's all fine and good and dandy. Okay. So let's take a look at Sefaria together. Okay. I don't know, should I change the view? I'm making myself a little larger. Okay, so we'll try to put the text towards the top if possible. So the last bit that we saw was in the last class was verse number 9, where we said, "Gadol yeh kavod habayit hazeh ha'acharon min harishon." Greater shall be the glory of this latter house than the first. Amar Hashem tzvakot, said Hashem, uvamalkom hazeh ten shalom, and in this place I shall grant peace, said Hashem. So we talked a lot about that last week. Is it talking about the second temple? Is it talking about the third temple? Yada, yada. Refer to last week's class for that. Now we have, as you can see here, we have like a little break in the text. That pay over here is a break in the text. And we start a new section, okay? So we're going to get into that. Any questions or comments before I begin?
We can't see the pay in the text. Our top line is...
That is so bizarre. I don't know why that is.
Our top line is Yud Gimel.
Yeah, you're right. But I see it. So maybe I'm using the wrong... Trying to figure which tab am I broadcasting to you that you're not seeing. I'm looking at it. So what are you looking at? It's very bizarre. How do I make you see what I see? Is it frozen or something? Let me see what happens if I close the tab. Then what happens? Okay, I see. I'm broadcasting the wrong tab. So let me fix it. Okay, now do you see it?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I had two tabs open to the same thing, and I thought I was using the one that I thought you were seeing, and it was a different one. That's what happens when I have too many tabs open, unfortunately. Okay, so here's the pay that I'm referring to in the text, if you can see where my pointer is, at the end of verse 9. Now here's verse 10. I'm going to scroll up. It's a new section. It reads as follows. Be'esrim v'arba'a ala tishii b'shnat shetayim ledar yavesh haya devar Adonai el Haggai hanavi lemor, which means as follows. Be'esrim v'arba'a ala tishii, on the 24th day of the 9th month. Now, because I clicked on it, it's going to open up the sidebar. Oh, no, it didn't. How do you like that? So, on the 24th day of the 9th month, in the second year of Darius, the word of Hashem came to Haggai the prophet, saying, now, we had Bri mentioned in the previous classes, Bri, one of our students, mentioned that the months here are the months of the Hebrew calendar. And I said at the time that I'm not convinced that's the case. Now, I did see at least one, maybe more of the commentaries here say that indeed these are the Jewish months, so that the 9th month corresponds to the Hebrew month of Kislev. So the first month being Nisan, that's when Passover takes place. And then the 9th month, starting with Nisan, is the month of Kislev, when Hanukkah takes place. So this actually is the 24th day of Kislev. Now, what's very interesting about that is that, well, I'll ask you, does anyone know what's interesting about the fact that this is the 24th day of Kislev? Does that date sound significant in any way? So the holiday of Hanukkah is begins on the 25th day of Kislev. And the idea of Hanukkah, which did not yet occur in the time of Haggai, although we did hear, according to at least Rashi's commentary, that Haggai already sort of prophesied the events of Hanukkah, and we did that 2 classes ago. Hanukkah is going to take place in the Second Temple time, sometime in the future of where Haggai is right now. And the 25th day of Kislev commemorates the day that the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, captured back the temple, which was defiled by the Greeks, and they cleaned it and they rededicated it, and they lit the menorah, they lit the lamps, right? They lit the menorah on that day, on the 25th day. of the month of Kislev. So there was a rededication of the second temple on that day. And that's the word Chanukah in Hebrew means dedication, as in Chanukat Habayit, dedication of the house or dedication of the temple. So it's interesting to me, pointing out what I noticed, is that this takes place on like the very day of the calendar right before what would become a major Jewish holiday. So just pointing that out. Now, okay, so then we get to verse 11. That's just sort of an intro of what time of year we're talking about. Now, prior to this, we had spoken about maybe the 6th month and the 7th month, and now we got to the 9th month, right? Am I wrong about that? If we go back, where did we see the last time it mentioned the date? In the beginning of chapter 2, it says in the 7th month, right? Chapter 1 ends in the 6th month. Chapter 2 begins in the 7th month. And now we have a passage of time. We're now in the 9th month, which is Kislev, okay? Any questions before we go to verse 11? Okay. Fine. Let's go ahead. So verse 11 says like this. Ko amar Adonai Tzivaos she'alna es hakohanim Torah lemor. Thus said Hashem of hosts, ask please, or ask now. The word she'al means ask, and na has a sense of urgency to it. So it means like now, or it's sort of asking please. There's an urgency to it. She'alna, ask now or ask please. The Kohanim, the priests, Torah, ask them Torah. Now, Torah literally means instruction or guidance, okay? So he says, you're going to ask the priests for instruction. Lamor, saying. Now, what will follow is the question. So it's another very simple, straightforward verse. Any questions on the way I've translated or anything until now? Okay. Verse number 12. Now, here's where it gets hard. Buckle your seatbelts. It's going to get complicated. So you're going to have to really hang on right now. He says, Hein yisa ish bisar kodesh bichnaf bigdo v'noga bichnafo el halechem ve'el hanozid ve'el hayayin ve'el hashem ve'el shemen ve'el kol ma'achol hayikdosh Vayanu hakohanim vayomiru lo. So this is a nice long verse. Can I make the text any bigger? I don't know if that's helpful or not. Is that helpful? Or is that not helpful? Okay, it's a nice long verse, and it translates essentially as follows. Hein yisa ish besar kodesh. I'm going to translate the words literally, and it's going to be extremely confusing. I'm warning you ahead of time. If a man will lift, will carry, okay, besar kodesh, that literally means holy meat. Basar is meat, kodesh means holy. If a man will carry holy meat, bichnaf bigdo, in the corner of his garment, v'naga bichnafo, and he touches with his garment. Now, those who are in the biblical Hebrew class will know that this prefix, the bet prefix, see, it opened up the sidebar there. The bet prefix that I highlighted, I don't know, can you see it? The highlighted bet, yeah, can mean in or with. Okay, so v'naga, and he will touch. Bichnafo could mean he will touch in his corner, or he will touch with his corner. It makes more sense as of now in English to translate it directly as with his corner, meaning the corner of his garment. He has a garment, and with the corner of his garment, he's carrying holy meat. What's holy meat? Meat from a sacrifice, okay? Presumably, I'm just saying, if you want to understand the words in a straightforward manner, but we're going to see it's not as easy as it sounds. And he will touch with his corner, meaning the corner of his garment. El halachem, he will touch literally to the bread. So it sounds like he's holding holy meat in the corner of his garment. And with the corner of his garment, he goes and he touches some bread. Now, is he touching the garment to the bread, or is he touching the meat that he's holding in the corner of his garment to the bread? What's touching the bread, the garment or the meat? Unclear, right? And it says, and to the nazid. Nazid means like a stew or a porridge, or some type of a food that's stirred in a pot. Okay, so some type of a stew. Okay, now does that mean, okay, I'm just reading it directly, and he touches with his corner to the bread and to the stew and to the wine, ve'al hayayin, and to the wine, ve'el shemen, and to oil, ve'el kol ma'achol, and to any food. It sounds like he took his corner, he touched all kinds of food with it. Hayikdash, that's the question. Hayikdash means, I know it's obscured by my head. Can I move my head over? Can I move this? Let me see if I can edit this layout. Is there a way to edit this? Okay, that's better, right? So we're right over here. Hayikdash. Now this hey is a question hey. It's called in Hebrew the hey hashe'elah, the question hey. Hayikdash means, will it become kodesh, which again literally means holy. Will it become holy? So just to review, if a man will carry sanctified meat, holy meat, in the corner of his garment, and he will touch with his corner to the bread and to the stew and to the wine and to the oil and to any food, will it become holy? Vaya'anu Kohanim, and the Kohanim answered, Vayomiru, and they said, lo, no. So he answered, he asked, if a man carries this holy meat and touches these things, will it become holy? And the Kohanim answered, no. Okay, that is the most literal reading that I could come up with. Any questions on that translation or on anything I've said until now? Bree, it's good to have you here. Now, we mentioned you. You already had a mention, Bree. Do you want to know how we mentioned you?
Uh-oh, I hope not. I hope it's okay.
Yeah. So we vindicated you. You had said that the months that were being counted in Haggai were the Hebrew months, and I had said that I did not see that in the commentaries, and then when I got to verse 10, which we passed, sorry, missed it, and it mentions the 9th month, basically all the commentaries say that here the 9th month is referring to the month of Kislev, which is in fact the 9th month beginning with Nisan. So it seems that the commentaries do agree with you, and I know you were only quoting the commentaries anyway, you weren't making it up. But I hadn't remembered those commentaries when
Baruch Hashem, they were talking about Sukkot, right?
We'll say that again.
Weren't they talking about Sukkot?
No, Kislev. If I didn't say that, Kislev is the holiday of Hanukkah.
Right,
You
right,
might have
right.
mentioned Sukkot. That's true because we spoke about the 7th month, and the 7th month is Sukkot. You have Rosh Hashanah, and you have
Right,
Sukkot
right.
in the 7th month.
Oh, may I just, because I've been pondering it, just like it's a thing, and we were talking about the 2 crowns, and that brought my mind back to Har Sinai when we were given
Right,
2
you mentioned
crowns.
right.
And my Rabbi Benzi, it's like being drilled into my head, or our heads now, Torah and mitzvot and Torah. And I thought that might be a little bit correlation with the crowns.
Right. So, well, yes, in a certain way, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, right? So what
Right,
we'll do is we'll
right.
perform the mitzvot,
And you mentioned that.
and listening is learning the Torah. And I said the connection here could be that the Kohen is the teacher, and the king is the enforcer of the actions, right? So that could fit those two. But
Oh, nice.
that I think I said last time, but it was off the cuff. But anyway,
Yeah, but I just thought, wow, I had been pondering that.
Yeah,
So,
well, I don't have much more to say, but I did want to mention we vindicated you while you.
oh, thank you very much, Rabbi.
But now we're going to continue. So, Golden Gun comments, a quiz for the Kohanim. Perhaps so. Are the Kohanim up to speed to be back doing temple service or not? So that is the way that some do understand this passage, that Haggai is now quizzing the Kohanim on the laws of purity and impurity, Tuma and Tahara, which is really, there's really no good translation in English for Tuma, which we tend to translate as spiritual defilement or impurity, and this is a very inexact translation, and Tahara, which we translate as like spiritual purity, but both of those translations fall short. Either way, they understand that he's testing the Kohanim, the priests, to see if they are well versed enough in the laws to serve in the temple, which is being prepared. Now, that said, these are extremely intricate laws, extremely complicated. And even, I would say today, the greatest legal experts in Torah tend not to be as expert or all expert in the laws of Tuma and Tahara, because for the most part, they have not been practiced for the last 2,000 years, since we no longer have a temple. They're not part of practical Jewish life for the most part, and therefore they're generally not studied and almost never mastered because they have no practical application. And even when they were studied, they were considered to be the most difficult and complicated area of Jewish law that only an elite group of people had mastery over it. And so therefore, with that caveat and that warning, we're going to have to take a little crash course right now in order to understand at least how Rashi is going to interpret these verses, which is more or less directly taken from the Talmud, the way the Talmud presents these verses. So,
okay, quickly, please.
Yeah.
Don't the Kohanim and the Levim have, especially the Kohen, because they know they still what tribe they from, that they have more onus. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but like duty, to be learning this.
You technically perhaps, but practically speaking, no. Meaning, again, the application of the laws of Tuma and Tahara, so to speak, purity and impurity, are so limited today that there's almost nothing that a Kohen today needs to know, because he's not applying it, he's not using it. But you're right that technically they should, because if we really believed in Mashiach, that he could come any time, like Rambam says, or like we say in the name of the Rambam, really, that I wait for him every day that he may come. So what do we do if he comes and he says, okay, we're building the temple, come Kohanim, it's time to serve, and they're not prepared with the knowledge they need, and it could take years to learn it. What are we going to do, right? So yeah, there is a responsibility, but practically speaking, it is not something that is well studied. So here, Golden Gun comments, today mainly we have Rambam, who deals with the stuff that doesn't apply to us today. Now, what he means by that is that over the generations, a number of codes of Jewish law have been written for practical application of the law. And the most prominent codes, like Shulchan Aruch, for example, only deal with laws that are applicable nowadays, and totally skips out. There's no section in Shulchan Aruch about the laws of purity and impurity, at least to the degree that is applicable in the temple. Whereas Maimonides wrote a code on every law in every time, in every situation, including the laws of purity and impurity. That is correct. 112JA, are you nice people follow the Lubavitch Rebbe? Well, I don't think anyone here is an adherent of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, although, we will grant that he was a holy man with beautiful teachings that are worthwhile to be studied and followed, but not in the sense of being a chassid or a devotee of the Lubavitch movement exclusively. Okay, now now let me present to you the way Rashi explains it, and I'm going to do it more or less without a text, because the text will drag us so deep that we'll never get out of it in time. So, and even that said, trying to explain it to you without the text is going to be hard. I could skip Rashi. I want to be honest with you. I could skip him.
But we love Rashi.
Well, yes, I could skip him and go to the other commentaries, but I feel that would be not an authentic way to study Tanakh, in that Rashi is the foremost commentator on Tanakh and Talmud, and it doesn't mean that he's the final word, but it does mean that he's the baseline of understanding, and we should begin with Rashi even if we don't end with Rashi. It just
because I think this every class, that I really love the effort you put in for searching out different commentaries. I really love it. And forgive me if I don't say it, but I'm thinking it.
It takes a lot of work. And like I said, a little caveat at the beginning of the class, I didn't have time to prepare like I like to this week. So I may jump from Rashi straight to the end and go to Malbim, because I think Malbim, from the commentaries I saw, is probably the most important and most profound and most applicable and relevant of the commentaries on this passage. And that's not to disdain any others, and we'll try to draw from the others what we can, but for the purposes of limitation of time, I'm going to focus on those. So, Golden Gun makes a comment. Seems like it is almost like Malbim is like a Rashi in the prophets, as Rashi is Rashi for Chumash. Yes and no. Meaning Malbim is a major commentary on the prophets. He's much more contemporary. He's like 19th century. Rashi is 11th century. Malbim writes much more than Rashi, and Rashi on Tanakh is extremely limited. His commentary is very limited, meaning he writes very little. Whereas Rashi on Chumash, on the 5 books of Moses, is still a very concise commentary, but he writes much more there than on Navi, on the prophets. Nevertheless, I have to tell you, and I've said this many times before, the primary commentary for any of these texts, whether it's Chumash, whether it's prophets, whether it's Talmud, the primary commentary is Rashi, hands down, period, end of sentence. Does that mean he's the only commentary? No, but he's the primary commentary. He's the king of commentaries. Even on Navi, when he writes very little, it has to be our first stop, and maybe our most important stop. But for our purposes, I'm gonna examine other sources. Please, Hashem should give me the ability. So let's go. All right. So looking back at this verse again, where it says, if a man will carry Besar Kodesh. So right away, Rashi flips the script, because Kodesh normally means, like we said before, holy or sanctified. But Rashi points out that it's also used to mean something else in the Torah. Believe it or not, holy can mean forbidden. Now, how so? It doesn't seem like such a big jump. You have to know that holy in Hebrew, kadosh or kodesh, really means separated for typically it means separated for some lofty purpose.
Would that be like offering the fire pan to Aaron's sons?
Well, in what way?
Because they were offering it, but they were burned up.
Therefore,
that's what came to mind.
Therefore,
just
I'm saying, how are you relating that to here? I'm not sure how you're relating it, but so it means separate, but it could also mean separate in terms of off limits and forbidden. And
your voice got all distorted, so I'm gonna leave and come back.
Okay, so mute your mic. If my voice is, if my If my audio is no good, please let me know. What should I do about it? I don't know, but I could try, turning it off and on again, as they say. So Kodesh, we usually mean holy as in set aside for a lofty spiritual use, but it could also be set aside because of its forbidden nature. And an example of that I'm just going to say off the cuff here is when it talks about forbidden mixtures in the Torah. One of the forbidden mixtures is planting certain types of plants together so that the roots kind of intermingle and they start drawing sustenance from the same piece of earth. If they're different species, depending on the mixture, this could cause them to become forbidden. And the word that the Torah uses there is kodesh, that it'll become kodesh, but it means forbidden. Okay. And there are other examples we're not going to go into right now, but essentially it has the connotation of being set aside because of its, in some cases, forbidden nature. So here, Rashi doesn't quite say that it's forbidden, but he says in the context we're talking about now, which is the temple and the temple service, what's forbidden in the temple is spiritual impurity or defilement, what we call in Hebrew, tumah. Okay, tumah is what's forbidden in the temple. And this is based on the Talmud. Rashi didn't make this up. This is how the Talmud in Psachim, Daf, Tes Zayin, Amud Beis, and Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, 16b, 17a, interprets it. That it means here, the Basar Kodesh means meat, sanctified meat of the temple service that has become, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean that. That's how some interpret it. The way Rashi understand, at least, again, even the Talmud is difficult to understand, and Rashi has a commentary on the Talmud. So what I'm telling you now is based on Rashi's comments to the Talmud, where the Talmud examines these verses. Why am I doing that? Because Rashi here in his commentary on Haggai follows the view of the Talmud, but as Golden Gun will tell you, he's so sparing in his words here that it's impossible to understand what Rashi means here unless you've studied that passage in the Talmud. So I did the homework for you, and I'm presenting it the way Rashi explains that passage in the Talmud, which comports perfectly with Rashi's words here, though you'd never understand Rashi's words here without studying the Talmud, okay? So here, Basar Kodesh, it means meat, flesh or meat that is impure. That is impure. Okay, you're going to have to hold on tight, folks. Especially, says Rashi, we're talking about what's called either, he gives an example, either a type of meat that's called nevela in Hebrew, or something that's called a sheretz. So let me explain what that is. Okay. Listen carefully. When it comes to spiritual defilement, there are many gradations that are identified by the Torah and the oral tradition. The gradations, let's say the highest form of tuma or impurity, meaning it's the most intense and conveys impurity most strongly, is something called an avi avot hatuma. Avi avot hatuma literally means the father of impurity, or the grandfather of impurity. Avi avot hatuma. What is an example of the grandfather of impurity? A dead body, a human cadaver. A human cadaver is avi avot hatuma. It is the ultimate source of spiritual defilement. And the pattern that spiritual defilement always emerges from something related to death. And the most death-related thing is the dead body itself. It is the grandfather of impurity. Now, a person who comes in contact with a dead body becomes contaminated on a very high level of impurity. And you'll understand what these levels... Again, it's too complicated now. There are books, thick books on the subject, which I happen to be in the middle of studying, it so happens, of all the intricacies of the different types of tuma and gradations of tuma and how they spread. It's extremely, extremely complicated. It could take years to study. But I'm giving you the Cliff Notes versions, this is an oversimplification. This is Tuma and Tahara for dummies. Spiritual impurity for dummies right now. Very oversimplified. A dead body is a grandfather of Tuma. The human being who's alive, who comes in contact with the dead body, becomes defiled, and he becomes what's called an Av HaToma, a father of Tuma. Again, oversimplification. If he touches something, the thing that he touches becomes what's called a Rishon L'Tuma. Rishon means first, a first level Tuma. Now, it's not really the first level because there's a prerequisite. There's the father of impurity, which is more impure. And there's the grandfather of impurity, which is the most impure. But it goes grandfather is the dead body. Father is the person that comes in contact with the dead body. And then you get, well, it could be a person or a thing even that comes in contact with a dead body. It doesn't have to be a person. I'm just saying, for example. Then let's say the person who's now the father of Tuma, because he came in contact with a dead body, now touches something. That thing, like a food or a piece of clothing, a vessel, that thing becomes a Rishon, like I said, a first level impurity. If what the Rishon touches becomes a Sheni, second level impurity. Now, I'm going to say something simple and then I'm going to modify it. Simple. There is nothing below a second level impurity. That's as low as it goes. Okay. So for example, just giving an example. So if God forbid, I was in the same room as a cadaver and I became now a father of impurity, and then I go and I touch a piece of food, okay? So that food becomes a Rishon L'Toma, first level impurity, and that food goes and touches another food. So that becomes a second level impurity, and that food goes, touches another food, nothing happens. Nothing happens, right? So the levels, they lower until they can't transfer the Toma any further. Okay, exception. You ready for the exception? By the way, stop me at any time if I'm being unclear. The exception is, don't get confused now. I'm going to say another word. Truma, not tuma, but truma with an R, tiruma. Tiruma means that the Torah commands that we have to separate, a Jew has to separate from his produce a certain measure that's not specified. It could really be technically any amount, which has to be a gift to the Kohen. And it has to be separated in a state of purity so that it does not become tameh. But once it becomes tameh, the Kohen can no longer use it. So you have your non-tameh produce and you separate a portion which you designate as a gift to the Kohen, and that's called tiruma, which literally means lifting up, because you separate it out, you so to speak, lift it up and you're elevating it to this higher level of sanctity by now sanctifying it as a holy gift for the Kohen. By raising its level of sanctity, it now becomes susceptible to an additional degree of tuma, of impurity, becomes more sensitive. So that now that food item, which was the sheni l'tuma, the second degree tuma, you following me? Again, cadaver, grandfather. Person comes in contact with the cadaver, father. Touches a food, first level. Food touches food, second level. And I said it can't go beyond the second level unless the thing that the second level food touches is tiruma. Okay, if it touches teruma, which has been raised in its sanctity as a gift to the priest, the teruma can now become tameh, can become impure from the second level tuma food, and it becomes a third level tuma. Can third level tuma then go and touch another thing and make it tameh, make it impure? No, it can't. Just like the second one can't, except to something which is lower than it, which is more sanctified than it, like truma. Then it goes and makes it a level 3 tuma. Okay, exception. So I just told you, summarize, nothing can become tameh, impure, from contact with a third level impurity. It's not powerful enough to transmit that tuma. exception. Something which is sanctified for use in the temple, which is called hekdesh or kodesh, is even a higher level of sanctity, is more spiritually sensitive. So if that piece of teruma, that priestly gift that became contaminated from the second level and now is a third level, comes in contact with something that was sanctified for the temple, that thing that was sanctified for the temple now becomes defiled. It becomes a fourth level impurity and is now invalid for use in the temple. Okay? Fine. What about the fourth level? Cannot transmit that tuma to anything else. That's the last level. Okay? Now, are you with me so far? I'm going to say it again. Grandfather tuma is the corpse. That conveys the next level of tuma, which is father tuma. That goes to first level tuma and to second level tuma. Only teruma, the priestly gift, is susceptible to third level tuma, and then that can convey it further to something sanctified for the temple to a fourth level tuma. So you got the levels: grandfather, father, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody got that?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, I was initially going to ask or point out that my Stones edition actually translates Basar Kodesh as defiled meat, and I was going to say why. But now you've explained that. But then looking back at the email that you sent, it says holiness is not contagious in inverted commas. So if we're looking at this verse, Basar Kodesh is not contagious, so therefore it must be Kodesh, not, like holy Kodesh, not defiled.
Okay, you're getting ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so hold on. to
Yay,
horse.
Liz.
Okay, I see it's getting late, and we haven't even explained the verses according to Rashi, and then I want to get to Malbim. So God's going to need to perform a miracle for us tonight. But okay, so now back to the verse. If a person will carry Basar Kodesh, which means, like you just said, defiled meat, and Rashi says specifically it's talking about either, I have to introduce a whole new category now. Either the meat of something called nevela or something called a sheretz. Okay, so now let me explain nevela and sheretz. Nevela means an animal's corpse, a corpse of an animal, and this is an animal that was not slaughtered according to shchita, the ritual slaughter. Okay, an animal that dies not by kosher ritual slaughter gets a status in the Torah of nevela. Nevela just means corpse. Okay. It's called corpse meat. It's forbidden. It's not kosher for Jews. Okay. This is actually one of the places where the Torah says that if a Jew has an animal that becomes nevela and he can't eat it, he should give it to the ger. He should give the meat to the ger. And it's a very peculiar passage why you should give the meat to the ger. A ger in Hebrew is usually literally a stranger, right? Usually translated as a convert. And the Torah says the convert has the same law as the Israelite. So the convert, if the Jew can't eat it, the convert can't eat it. And that's one of the places where we know the Torah in that context of ger is talking about what's called the ger toshav, or the resident, so to speak, resident alien, which is essentially the non-Jew living in Israel who keeps the 7 laws of Noach. That's actually one of the
quickly, please.
Very quickly, because I'm out of town.
Yeah. We just started studying Yosef, okay? And one of the things that he accuses of the brothers, which was not right, was that they were eating a limb from the live animal.
Right.
And I never knew this. When it says not eating the limb, when it's shecht, it still quivers or moves. A Jew can eat, but all the other goyim cannot eat it until that animal is not moving.
Right. That's because the ritual slaughter renders it kosher for Jews, but because ritual slaughter is irrelevant for non-Jews, it does not render it kosher for the non-Jew, and therefore they have to wait till the animal's still before they can eat it. Can I move on? Can I move on?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to what's called nevela. You have a dead animal corpse, okay? This corpse is tame. It is impure. I hate that word, but I'm just going to use it. What level of impurity is it? It is the Av Hatuma, that is the father of impurity. It's not as impure as a human dead body, which is the grandfather. It is only the Av Hatuma, it is the father. And then it would convey Tuma in the concentric level that I described before, to a Rishon, to a Sheni, then to Truma, a Shlishi, and to Kodesh, a Revi, right? First, second, the Truma would get the third level, and the Kodesh would get the fourth level. The other one is called a Sheretz, Rashi says. A Sheretz is the dead body of certain crawling creatures. Sheretz is a crawling creature. The Torah identifies 8 crawling creatures that have the status of an Av Hatuma. These crawling creatures, despite them being sort of small, seemingly insignificant creatures, have the same level of Tuma when they're dead as a dead cow, okay? So Rashi says whatever the verse is referencing here, it's an Av Hatuma. It is the father level impurity. And so he identifies this meat as either the flesh of a nevela, a dead animal, or a sheretz, a dead crawling creature that has this status. And now he's carrying it in the corner of his garment. He's not touching it directly. And then he touches with the corner to the bread. Now the question is, what did he touch to the bread? The garment or the thing in his garment? Okay, so now let's do the math. If it's the thing in the garment, if it's the Av Hatuma, the piece of meat itself, okay, so then it touches the bread. What is the bread now? The bread is a Rishon L'Tuma. It's a first level impurity. And then the way Rashi understands it based on the Talmud is that the bread touches the stew. The bread touches the stew, and now the stew becomes a second level impurity. And the stew touches the wine, and the wine becomes the third level impurity. And now the wine touches the oil or any other food. That's the way Rashi explains it based on his understanding of the Talmud. And I'm going to confess to you that others understand the Talmud differently. And it's, yes, I agree that it's a little bizarre to explain it this way. And there are other ways to explain it. We just can't go into all the explanations. So I'm just sticking to Rashi, and bear with me. So again, the meat is a father level impurity. The father of impurity is in the clothing. He touches it to the bread. What does he touch to the bread? The meat or the clothing? Unclear. If it's the meat, the bread becomes a first level impurity. The bread touches the stew becomes a second level impurity. The stew touches the wine becomes a third level impurity. And the wine touches the oil, or it's not the oil, and then the oil touches something else. Again, based on Rashi. The oil or any food item. So there's these two, oil or any food item, is the final step. Okay. Does that thing become hayikdosh? Does that thing become defiled? Does it become a fourth level impurity? Now I'm gonna spoil for you that the food or all these, everything that's being described here are holy. Everything that's being described here are things that are in the temple being used for temple service. So they all have that level of Kodesh. So based on what I told you before, Kodesh is susceptible to fourth level impurity. So now I ask you, that final thing that he touches, the oil or the food, does it become defiled or not? You answer me.
I'm thinking no, because that lifts up the other one.
What do you mean it lifts it up?
It raises up the impurity of the other one, or cancels it out or something. I forget how you put it.
Why?
Because of its purity.
Where are you getting that from?
I don't know. I thought I got it from you, but I must have misunderstood.
I never said anything about raising purity. No, there's something with a higher level of sanctity is susceptible to an additional degree of defilement, right? So we said that a plain food cannot become more impure than second level. So second level, a food that's a second level impurity touching another food won't have any effect on it, unless that food has a higher level of sanctity. Like we said, teruma, the gifts for the priest. The gifts of the priest that has a higher level of sanctity is sensitive to an additional degree of impurity. So the level 2 impurity food that touches truma, the priestly gift, will defile it, and the truma becomes a third level impurity. But the third level impurity cannot impact anything else except something that it has a higher level sanctity than it, which is something which is dedicated to the temple service. So we're talking here, everything in this verse are things that are part of the temple service. Can this food, which is a third level impurity, transmit fourth level impurity to the final item here?
If the final item is oil for the service in the temple, then the answer must be yes.
Then the answer is yes. So when the priests answer him and they say no, did they give him the right answer or the wrong answer?
Wrong answer.
The wrong answer. Correct. Now, rewind. The Talmud offers 2 opinions as to what happened here. The case I told you is he's holding the meat in his clothing, and he takes the meat, the defiled meat, and he touches it to the bread. But the other opinion in the Talmud is, no, he's touching the meat with his clothing. So the meat is of father level impurity, and it touches the clothing. What's the clothing now?
The Rishon.
The clothing is the Rishon. It's the level 1 impurity. Now the clothing touches the bread. What's the bread?
Second level.
Second level. The bread touches the stew. The stew is?
Third level.
Third level. The stew touches the wine. The wine is?
Fourth level.
Fourth level. The wine touches the oil or any other food. This is the end of the line. Does the oil or any other food become contaminated?
No, can't do
No,
anything.
it does not. So when the priests answered no, were they giving the right answer or the wrong answer?
By
Right
that
answer.
interpretation, the right one.
They gave the right answer. So the Talmud itself offers 2 opinions as to what the question of Haggai to the priests was. And based on which was the question, turns out whether the priests were right or the priests were wrong.
And
Now,
it's not only that, it's whether it meant defiled or actual holy meat.
we're
Sanctified.
going, yes, you're right. Right now we're going with the Talmud, that the Talmud understands it to mean defiled in this context. So in that case, they said no, okay? We're never going to finish tonight. I'm so sorry. Now we have to look at the next verse. Okay, it says like this, Vayomer Haggai. And Haggai said, Im yigat temei nefesh b'chol ele. If something which is temei nefesh, that means impure, and nefesh means a soul. An impure soul touches all of these. Excuse me. Hayitma, will it become tameh? Here he uses the word tameh both times, right? He actually uses the word tameh directly, defiled or impure. Will it become impure? And vaya'anu kohanim, and the priests answered vayomeru, and they said yitma, it will become tameh. So the second question, they answer it will become defiled. The first one they said no. What is the second question? So Rashi says the second question means if temei nefesh, a contaminated soul, means a dead body. This is grandfather tuma, grandfather impurity. So he says, repeat the same case now, he says. Same case I told you, but instead of the sheretz or the nevela, the father level impurity, touching these things down the line, what if the dead body itself, which is grandfather tuma, touched the bread, which touched the stew, which touched the wine, which touched the oil or any other food? Then would it become defiled? What do you say?
Yes, because it's only third level, not fourth level.
So certainly it will become defiled, even according to the one that he touched it. Yeah, here it's just it's direct. So everyone agrees, everyone would agree over here that it's defiled, because like you said, it's the last one in the line is now third level instead of fourth level, which the priests agree was impure. So what's going on over here? Says Rashi, he was testing the priests to see if they knew the laws of purity and impurity. And as it turned out, there was a gap in their knowledge. They knew about grandfather impurity, father impurity, first level impurity, second level impurity, and third level impurity, but they were not aware of fourth level impurity. So in the case where there was a fourth level impurity, they said, oh, that's not defiled. And it turns out they were wrong. Whereas in the case of the grandfather impurity, they were aware that the third level impurity defiles. And again, that's assuming they got the answer wrong. We said the other review is that they got the answer right. But we're now going, Rashi here seems to be, okay, now, well, let's go with the view that they got the answer wrong, okay? So what Rashi then says, here's verse number 14. We'll have to stop after 14. He says, Vaya'an Haggai. And Haggai, where'd it go? And Haggai answered, Vayomer, and he said, Kain ha'amazeh, so to this nation, v'chein hagoy hazeh lefanai, and so to this goy, which also means nation, before me, Ne'um Hashem, said Hashem, v'chein kol ma'aseh yadehem, and so too all the actions of their hands, va'asher yakrivu sham, and that which they shall sacrifice there, they shall offer there in the temple, tamehu, it is defiled. So in short, what he's saying, so to this nation, ha'amazeh refers to the Kohanim themselves. So to these priests, the word goy here meaning nation is the nation of Israel. So they are before me, and so all the works of their hands and that which they offer in this temple is impure. Meaning, just like you priests don't know the laws of impurity, if you don't know the laws of impurity, certainly the people don't know the laws of impurity, and therefore all the works of their hands are going to be done improperly according to the laws of impurity, and that which they offer in the temple will be defiled, will be impure, will be unacceptable. And so without going further, I wanted to do the next verse, but the idea is you guys got to get your act together, because if you really want the temple to be built, you need to know what you're doing in it. Otherwise, everything that happens in this place is going to be unacceptable, and it might be worse than if it was never built. So he's exhorting them, get your act together. Because he proved to them that they didn't know. Now, what about according to the view that they did know what they were talking about? So in the second question, when he says, what about a dead body? What about dead body? And they say, oh yeah, that'll be defiled. So he says, so too, this nation is also like that. And then the question is, well, if they know the laws of purity and impurity, then why is the nation like that? And essentially, I'm going to say it really quick, because their deeds are not up to snuff. And therefore, in a certain way, he's not saying that they're going to defile the temple, but in the way that a dead body would defile the temple is the way that this nation, that the works of their hands will be as contaminated and defiled and impure in my eyes as a dead body in the temple, because of the non-desirability of their actions, and they need to change their actions. And what are those actions? So he's going to go into it in the following verses, and we'll leave that there. I feel terrible because it's already well past 9 o'clock, and I really wanted to show you the Malbim. Maybe we could squeeze it in. Do people have patience to go a little more?
We have, if you have the time.
I'm going to try, okay? Because I kind of promised it, and I want to deliver. So let me try to show you the text of the Malbim, and I'll try to sum it up as quickly as I can, which is as follows. Okay, so let's look in the commentaries. I like his wording so much that I don't want to cheapen it by just saying it in my own words even. Okay, so now he understands it totally different from Rashi, and he says where it says Bisar Kodesh, holy meat, it actually means holy meat, like meat that was consecrated for the temple, right? Holy sanctified meat of a sacrifice. He says if a man will carry this meat and he's going to take the meat and then he's going to touch it to bread or to stew or to wine or to oil or to any food, will that food become sanctified through contact with the sanctified object? What do you think the answer is?
No.
The answer is no. That's correct. And here the Kohanim answered him correctly. In other words, there's a disagreement in the commentaries whether he was testing the Kohanim to sort of prove that they were wrong and they didn't know their stuff, or no, they knew their stuff, but he was giving them these hypothetical situations as an allegory. So they were answering him according to his allegory, the same way that Nathan the prophet comes to David and he says there was a man and he was rich and he had all these sheep and his neighbor was poor and he had only one and he took his neighbor's sheep and he killed it and he served it to his guest. And David says, you know, that man deserves to die and he should pay 4 times. And then Nathan says, oh, just kidding, David, that's you, right? He used an allegory to teach a point of ethics, even though he was using a legal case. Right. So here, Haggai is doing the same thing. He's giving them this hypothetical case of law, and he's going to turn it into an allegory for ethics. So the answer is no. Sanctity does not transfer through touch like spiritual defilement transfers through touch. Right. Okay. Moving on. Then he says, but if ye got to me nefesh b'chol ela, if something that was defiled by a dead body, let's say, would touch these things, would they become defiled? And the answer is
yes.
Yes, they do. So sanctity does not transfer through touch, but defilement does transfer through touch. Then he goes on to say, so to this people and so to this nation before me, says Hashem, and all the works of their hands and that which they will offer here, Tamehu, it is defiled. What does that mean? Says Malbim. Ready? We're going to blow the roof off right now. He says, he says, the nation, the state of the nation today, he says, is similar to the answer that you gave to this question. That, these are his words, She'em yitkarvu v'yigu b'kedusha, that if they would come close to and touch something sanctified, kedusha, sanctity, lo titdabek hakedusha bahem, the sanctity would not attach itself to them. It wouldn't rub off on them. It wouldn't stick to them. They will not be sanctified by touching something that has sanctity. But when they approach something that is impure, the defilement does attach itself to them. Okay, so meaning what? Okay, now, on the other hand, says the Malbim, and this is a case of law that actually comes from the Torah. He says, let's say you would take this sanctified piece of meat and you cook it in a pot, okay? And in this pot, you throw in some spaghetti. Okay, I'm just giving a case. So you took the meat of the sacrifice and you boiled up a pot of water and you put some spaghetti in there. That's plain spaghetti. It's not sanctified spaghetti. It's not defiled spaghetti. It's parava spaghetti. And you throw the sanctified meat in there. They're boiling together, and the spaghetti is now absorbing the flavors from this sanctified meat, and now it's absorbed of the flavor within it. Does the spaghetti become sanctified? What do you say?
I'm thinking yes.
The answer is yes, because it's absorbed something substantial from that which is sanctified. Then the sanctity is absorbed within it. So he says the only way for sanctity to transfer into something is that it should be absorbed by it, not through superficial touch, but through absorption, deep absorption. So he says, so too a person, in order to become sanctified, needs to absorb sanctity into himself. And how does that happen? He needs to not perform acts of service to God superficially, which is only superficially touching the sanctity, in which case it has no impact on the man whatsoever. But he needs to absorb the meaning of the actions within his heart and within his soul. It has to be meaningful to him on the inside. He says, because the physical body, in its physicality, in its materialism, is not really related to sanctity, which is something spiritual. Sanctity cannot just be superficially touched. It has to be absorbed within the heart and the soul of a person. Whereas defilement, he says, can impact even the physical body of something. So he says, now the state of the Jewish people is that they're performing acts of service and they're performing fulfillments of the commandments with their hands only, he says, with their external bodies, but not with their hearts and their souls. They're not investing their heart and their soul into the performance of the commandments and into the service of Hashem. And therefore, their service of God is considered tameh. It is considered spiritually impure and defiled, because it's susceptible to defilement in the fact that it's so superficial. He says, therefore, so even the offerings that they would bring in this temple would not be acceptable, because they're not being done through a service of the heart and the soul. Therefore, they're considered defiled. He says, therefore, the people are not yet ready to build a temple and to build an altar for physical service to me, because they haven't not yet built a spiritual temple and a spiritual altar in their heart and in their soul. These are his words. He says, Ki aden lohit kadju, they have not yet sanctified themselves, lehidavek el hakedusha, to attach themselves to sanctity, velivnot mikdash umizbeach ruchani, and to build a sanctuary, a mikdash, a holy place, umizbeach, and an altar, ruchani, a spiritual one, a spiritual sanctuary, and a spiritual altar, belev vanefesh, of the heart and soul. Asher alav ya'alu et nafsham ola laHashem. Oh, these words are so beautiful. That upon it, they shall offer their own souls to me as a burnt offering to God. It's so much more beautiful in the Hebrew. But before we can build a physical temple, and before we can build a physical altar, and before we can offer physical sacrifices, korbanos, offerings, in this temple and on this altar, every person has to first build for himself a spiritual temple and a spiritual altar in his heart and in his soul. And upon the spiritual altar that it's in the heart and in the soul of each person, he must offer up his own self and his own soul as a sacrifice to God. And if he can offer his own self and his own soul within his heart, within himself, spiritually, emotionally, meaningfully, deeply, in his connection with God, through that relationship, he can merit to have a physical temple and a physical altar where he can offer physical offerings that can be imbued with the proper spirituality to connect us to God. And so that was the communication of Haggai to the priests. Not saying there's anything wrong with you or your knowledge is wrong. Here are the cases, just like the case of the sanctified meat doesn't sanctify that which it touches, but the defiled impurity does impact that what it touches. The same thing with physical acts of service. If they're superficial and they're physical, they are like that which is defiled. They're susceptible to defilement and impurity, and they're not acceptable in this place. But rather acts of service to God, which are spiritual, which are internal, those are not those have sanctity, and those are not spiritually defiled. And that's what's lacking in this nation. So too this people, and so too the acts of their hands. The acts of their hands are superficial. They are therefore defiled. And therefore, if they build a temple and an altar here, what they offer here will be defiled before me, even if all the laws are kept. But spiritually, they'll be considered defiled because they're not being offered with the proper sense of spiritual and emotional attachment to Hashem. So he's telling the Kohanim, first you need to instruct the people, and first you need to guide the people and teach the people how to attach themselves emotionally and spiritually to me within them. And then the acts of service that they perform can be elevated to be desired by me, and a temple and an altar built in this place. Okay, that is the end. Okay, but again, just we offered two views of this portion of the text. Is it talking about defiled meat, and he's sort of quizzing them to see if they're ready to take on the service of the temple, or if their knowledge is lacking? Or rather, is he simply using these cases of the sanctified meat, literally, or the defiled meat, as a allegory and a parable and a metaphor to tell the Kohanim that the people themselves need to change and elevate themselves before they can have a temple? And I hope you find this passage moving and relevant, and taking enough of your time.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I thought that was super duper meaningful. I know the first part was extremely technical, but there was no way. And normal, I have to be honest with you. Normally, when I teach this, I skip Rashi. I just skip it because it's too complicated for most people, including myself. Like, it took me a long time to even, everything I explained to you took me a very long time to digest myself. It was a lot of work. So I don't even usually bother people with those details. I just go straight to Malbim, and I go with the literal interpretation: sanctified meat, impure meat, right? And Malbim's interpretation is so beautiful and relevant spiritually. I usually just jump straight to that. And maybe I should have, but like I introduced in the beginning, I feel like to skip Rashi is like anathema to Torah studies. So we had to look at Rashi. Sometimes I throw up my hands and I say, I don't know what Rashi means. Let's move on. But I made my best attempt, and I know it really took up the majority of the first hour, and I had to go over time, and I appreciate your patience. But those are the two views that I hoped to at least see in this hour: Rashi's view, more technical view, or Malbim's view, which is a more ethical view. And I hope it was meaningful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. I see there's a lot of comments. I don't have time. So next time you can purchase a highlighted comment, or send me an email, rabbi@rabbirafimollot.com. Everybody have a great night. Have a good Shabbos, and see you next time.
Good night. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.